Help me welcome my friend Tara Jones. Tara is the wife of Adam, and she has four kids. She has lived in Lake City almost all of her life. She has a beautiful story that includes adoption, and it's an ongoing story. And I just can't wait for you guys to hear it. So, Tara, tell us your story.
Well, thanks for having me. I was so excited when you had asked me a couple of weeks ago if I would speak about this. It's something that's very close to my heart and Adam's heart, and we don't really talk about it a whole lot because you can't. Adoption, a lot of it is hush hush until it's finalized and all of that. So we haven't always got to tell our story in full, but so I'll start from the beginning. I was adopted when I was 6. My mom and dad lived in West Palm at the time, West Palm Beach, and felt the Lord leading them to adopt. They had one son, Tim, my brother, and they really wanted to expand their family. And so they sought out a sibling group. And so me and my 2 brothers were adopted when I was 6 years old. And so it's always been a normal thing in my life. We were always very well aware, and my parents were very big about openly discussing it and talking about it, and gave us whatever information they could give us about our family whenever we asked. And so it's always been something very close to us. So Adam and I got married in 2003. He didn't know much about adoption. He didn't know hardly anything at all. It was just something that people in his family hadn't really done, or didn't know a lot of people who had done it, and kind of one of those things that you hear about it, but you don't really know a lot of people about it. So it wasn't anything he ever thought he would do. So we have 3 children, our first 3, Rachel, Emily, and AJ, and kind of had them back to back. They're all like less than 2 years apart, and grew our family pretty quickly. And then we thought we were done. We had our perfect little 5-person family, and we were good. And so about 9 years ago, Raylan came into our life. She was actually brought to us at church. I was working the church nursery, and her mother came in with her and said, "Hey, I need someone to watch Raylan for a little bit, and I'm trying to get things worked out." And long story short, she ended up staying with us, and she's been with us. We adopted her at 4 years old, and it was just something that just came on us. We hadn't really talked about doing it, and when she was brought to me at nursery, I had called Adam and said, "What do you think about this? Or taking in another child?" And he was like, "Well, okay. I mean, is it like babysitting?" And I said, "Yeah, we'll just babysit for a while." And one thing led to another, and now she's ours. So
I just love that so much. It's like you're getting to pay it forward, the gift of adoption that you experienced, and you're getting to do the same thing for another beautiful child.
Right, yeah. And it wasn't without challenges. Like, Adam really struggled with it in the beginning. People think that, like, "Oh, you guys just love adoption. That's so great. You both love it." And but Adam didn't, and he'll be the first one to tell you. He was, to him, it was babysitting, just like I said before. And he didn't understand the attachment and how you could bond with somebody else's child, and he didn't understand all of that. I bonded right away. Like, I think from the beginning, God had shared with me that she was mine forever, and that was hard because she wasn't ours, and it I had to hide those feelings. As a mom, you have to hide that you love this child because she's not yours, and you can't show that. You can't show that you love this child like your own, because then you look like you're stealing somebody's kid. And so that was very hard. So there's a lot of emotion you have to hide, and you have to put aside, and you have to think logically. And, I think from a man's perspective, it was a lot easier for Adam to do that, because the men, I feel, are more logical in those aspects. But I knew from the beginning she was going to be ours. And where Adam was like, "Well, she'll probably go home. That's fine. We'll send her home." And then Raylan was about 2 years old when Adam, like, just fell in love with her. I think he told me one time, he came home from work, and she comes running down the hallway and calls him daddy. And that broke him. And so I think that's what reeled him in, and he realized. And she was only 2. We didn't adopt her until she was 4. It took 4 years for us to go through the process of adopting her before she became ours. So there's a lot of things people don't talk about with adoption, and those are the emotional roller coaster that's constant, and the emotion of, you know, DCF or partnership telling you, oh, you want to adopt? Great. And then the next week, oh, but she's going to go back to her mom. We're going to do reunification. That's their favorite word. And,
Mm.
oh, but, that's not going to happen. Let's adopt. And they would go back and forth. So it was a big roller coaster of emotions. And I remember one of the ladies at church, so like I had said, her mom came and brought her to nursery. And come to find out, it wasn't the only one she had asked to take in Raylan. So a lot of the women at the church had already been asked. So when I came with Raylan on Sunday, it was a Wednesday night, and I came in on Sunday, they're like, oh, you're the one who took the baby. She had asked a bunch of people, and you're the one who took her. And I'm like, well, yeah. And I didn't realize that, how many people she had already asked. And one lady, to this day, I still hear her say it. She looked at me, she goes, Tara, you're doing a great thing. You took in this baby. And I said, well, anybody would have done that. And she looked at me very seriously and she said, no, I didn't do it. I turned her away. She goes, everybody in this church turned her away and you didn't. And it dawned on me, and it's like, that's a real decision people make, like it's not just this child that, everybody will take in. Like, I really believe God calls certain people to do it. And people tell me all the time, like, oh, I love adoption. It's so great, but I could never do it. And I'm like, that's okay. You don't have to say you'll take in every kid. You can't. I mean, I can't. I've been able to take in this one, and it's been great. But that's something I've really learned in this whole process, is that you can't just assume that's what everybody should do, because not everybody's called to do it. Not everybody should be doing it, and nobody should ever feel bad if they can't do it.
Right.
So
That's a great point. And I think that's a really good, healthy perspective too, because I think that we would tend to want to take them all in, and not any of us can do that. And clearly, that's not what's happening. I know, but I mean, I guess that mama heart, like you were describing, when you just start loving them like that, would probably want you to say, well, let me see how many more can I take in, but we can't
right,
realistically do that. And
right,
so it's beautiful though. It is so beautiful. And I love the perspective that your friend at church said, that others had turned her away, but yet you were the one. You were the one God had for her.
yeah, and that's okay. And that's what I want. That's really what I want to emphasize, is it's okay to say you can't do it, and it's okay to say no. And it's definitely a called position. And I don't think I'm called for it all the time. I'm not trying to uplift myself or anything, but I feel like that. I look back on that time in my life, and it's like, at that time we were called to do it, and at that time all the pieces fell together. Even though it took 4 years, it was a long time, but it all fell together, and our desires for it fell together. I don't think I have that same feeling. I would have that same feeling again if I just took in like a foster. Like, I feel like I could be able to to have that heart of discernment to know, like, okay, is this going to be my child forever, or is this just a child I'm taking care for at the time? And there's different feelings along those lines. And in the end, only God can navigate those feelings for you. And in the end, it's all Him. It's all up to Him on how you're going to feel about it. So that takes a little pressure off, I think. You just got to
Yeah.
trust, God, and, giving you the right instincts for it.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. Whenever we realize it's not up to us, it does take that pressure, I'm sure, off, knowing that He's got it in His hands. He knows who, that very night that mama came and approached you, God already knew she was for you.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that said no, she was not for them. There is peace in that. I can see what you mean by that, for sure. It's like just that knowing that God's got it all in His hand, and all those details. I mean, to think about, you were describing like the up and down of the 4 years, Tara. What a journey that had to be, and so heart wrenching when you knew she was for you all along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at any time she could have been taken. I mean, I had no rights to her. At any time they could say, well, she's going back, or she's going here. And during that 4 years, there was a moment where a relative was interested in her. We'd already had her for like 3 years, and all it would have taken was the relative to be approved and accepting of it. and they would have shipped her off. And she lived in Michigan, a very far away state. It's not like I could ever see her again. So there was always that, lingering in the background. It's a very emotional time, I think, for a lot of people when they get into that, and you have to be ready for that. You have to be willing to have your heart broken over and over and over again, just to make sure that child has the proper love and care
Right.
that they need.
I think that is the picture right there of just really laying down your life, but in a way like all of your emotions about it. You kind of had to just, I'm sure, lay that down and look at what you were doing for the long haul, for the beautiful gift that you were giving to her, and being able to be very selfless about that is
Mhm.
just very much like Christ, for
Yes.
sure. Yeah.
And on the flip side, she's given us such a blessing. Like we can talk all day about all the things we've done for her and what life she could have had if she wasn't with us, and
Mhm.
but in the end, she made our family complete, and we all love her so much. The older kids and me and Adam have bonded with her so much, and it's like, I mean, it's like she's just always been,
Yeah.
and she's given us a lot in that aspect. There's so much blessing we've received from her.
I'm sure all the emotions were involved. So, was there any kind of humor, anything that you guys look back on fondly? You just described the sweet moment when she ran down the hallway to Adam, but anything that stands out for you guys?
Oh yeah, I mean, especially with the kids, like my older three, they they just adored her. She would always make them laugh. She was a very calm and sweet baby. Like she didn't have, she wasn't, she was had great temperament. Everybody loved her, and people just, and it's funny because she's not the same race as we are. She's mixed. We're not really sure with what, but she's definitely not the same skin tone as us, and her hair's a lot different. And there have been times she's even mentioned that, like, why do I look a little different? And so that's been kind of fun and comical when we're out and about, and people are, kind of looking at us, and especially in the beginning when she was so young, it was clear that she was, a year old or whatever, that she was just a baby. And we would go to the store, and people just kind of, the cashier would just kind of look at us like, oh, what a cute baby. And we're like, thanks. And, they want to ask so bad. Like, they just want to ask so bad, like, wait a minute, is she yours? What, how, we used to make up all kinds of crazy stories we'd like to tell them, but we wouldn't make it too bad. But so there are always times of those when it's like, she was just so special to us that we couldn't, like, I remember one time my sweet mama, she'd be like, why do you hold her so much? Stop holding her. And it's just like, I can't let her go. She's mine. And, and so we all just coddle her probably too much. Now she's a little spoiled, so we're having to make up for that and go overtime in the discipline area. But she's just fit in so well for us. And our kids, we were very open with them, even to this day, about adoption, and we talk about it. My kids, the older kids, all talk to Raylan about it. Raylan knows she's adopted. I've shown her pictures of her mom and her other siblings. She's got some half siblings, and so everybody's really well aware, and we're very open about it. And Raylan talks about it a lot, and sometimes the kids like to tease her and look at her and just be like, "You're adopted, Raylan." And we'd say, "Well, Raylan, that just means you're chosen. We didn't get to choose the other three; they just came. We got to choose you." And so we always uplift her and never make her feel like she's any less for it. If anything, we make her feel like she's a little bit more because we got to actually choose her. And
Use her.
so yeah, so we like to joke about it a little bit, but it's all in good fun, and so we have fun.
That's such a beautiful story. And I love that you've done the exact same thing that your mom modeled for you, because whenever you shared earlier that your mom was very open with your conversations about being adopted and all that, you're doing the same thing for Raylan. And I just love that. You're just, it's like completely getting to see that come back into the next generation, you know?
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, I feel like everybody needs to know about it, especially the ones who are going through it. It needs to be talked about and shared, and so it's really important, especially for kids, so they don't
Yeah.
feel different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you've just said that you've even shared like pictures of her mom with her. And now,
Mhm.
has she seen her mom since being with y'all, or that's not really? For
No,
I
I
mean,
mean,
you
in the
adopted.
beginning, I mean, the first 4 years before she was adopted, they did a lot of visitations and Skype calls because her mom did move up north. So
Mm,
there was a lot of communication in the beginning. Now, even though it's technically a closed adoption, I'm not obligated to send her anything or communicate with her at all or whatever. But I do have a decent relationship with her. We do communicate. She actually got married about a year ago, invited us to the wedding, like, wanted us to come visit and all. We weren't ready for that yet, but I was glad that we had that relationship with her, that we felt like I text her a couple of times a year, send her pictures, ask how things are doing, and she asks how Raylan's doing. And, it's been really great. And one day I hope they do meet. I really want them to, because, I mean, her
mhm.
mom, I think, no matter what happened in her life, she still has these children. I mean, Raylan's one of five, I think. And yeah, and so these are her babies, these are her children. And she's always going to think of them and always remember them. And I want to honor that, like I'm not trying to take, even though it has been taken from her, she'll always live with that. And as a mom, I would always want to know how my kids were doing. And so I always make sure she gets pictures and updates and, you know, yeah.
That's that's beautiful also. Very gracious of you, and I would expect nothing less. That does not surprise me of you that you would be like that with her. Um, so now, one of the things you just mentioned, the idea of, you guys got to choose Raylan. I love that language because it just makes me think about how God does that for us. I mean, He adopts
Mhm.
us into His family. And that's to me what I think of when I think of adoption and the families that I know of in my life that I've seen doing that. It's got to take so much unconditional love, the emotions that you just talked through, that you've had to go through over this journey, and then even still going on forward, because being willing to keep that relationship up and allowing that to be, even though it's closed, but yet keeping in contact. Again, that takes so much unconditional love, that you're, again, being selfless, Tara, because you're willing to allow that. Whereas some might would say, nope, you know what, I'm not comfortable with that. But yet you are just being so beautifully open about it. And I just want to commend you because I just think that's probably the better route, clearly, but also sometimes could be hard, you know?
And I mean, thankfully, it's been easier for us. We didn't always have a good relationship with our mom, but from the very beginning, we definitely tried, and she tried for even those 4 years. That was really hard and rough because she was very hurt and upset and angry about it all, which she had every right to be. I get it. But thankfully for us, it's been easier to do that. Not everybody can do that. If you've got parents you can't communicate with, or you can't reach out to, or they themselves have no desire whatsoever. There's plenty of those. And so I think we've gotten very blessed in that department, that we're able to keep that open communication with her for the most part.
I agree. It is beautiful to see that, for sure. That's going to be the best, as you said, for Raylan, because it's good for kids to know, like to know their whole story. We all have a story, and just like you had the story that you shared of your adoption at the beginning, it's so beautiful that you got to know that fully and that wasn't kept from you. And I do realize there's circumstances where sometimes it has to be, but whenever you can, it's just such a neat thing to get to be able to fully understand it and see that and see how God worked in your life to get you to the place where you are, to be adopted by your beautiful and amazing parents. And then here you are doing the same thing. And interesting how it unfolded for Raylan, because did you actually know her at church before that evening, or was that just like a impromptu
I
thing?
think I had met her once or twice. She had visited here and there. She was from Lake City, and she had visited the church a few times. So I knew her. I actually think she was in like my mom's Sunday school class for a little bit. My mom taught a Sunday school class at the time, so I knew who she was. I didn't know her
I,
really well. So
right. Yeah. Interesting. Isn't that neat though? And it's just the
yeah.
way God orchestrated it perfectly.
And I don't usually work nursery on Wednesday nights. So
Mhm.
for me to just be in there helping out, and, this baby comes in, it was definitely all God designed. And the funny thing is, a little backstory on that too, is that Adam had got a promotion at work. He had gotten this really great, fabulous job. I was able to quit my job and kind of do a stay-at-home mom thing. I was actually homeschooling at the time for a few months. and ended up putting my kids into Belmont. And right at that time, I just put them into school. And so I didn't have a job. I'm just sitting at home. And literally the next week, this baby comes to me and I'm like, I actually have time to babysit. I could do this, you know? So it's just funny how God worked in that aspect, like with Adam's job change and then my job ending and then, you know, being at home and not really having anything to do, looking to go back to work. And I was able to, there was just no excuse to say, no, I don't have time, you know? And it's because that was my child that I needed to take in and start taking care of. So,
Yes, just like we prepare when we're pregnant for a child, right? But you, instead in this
right.
case, you didn't know that you were getting this child ahead of time, but God prepared the way. He went
Yeah.
right before you and prepared it. That's a really cool backstory. I like that a lot. Love to
Yeah.
hear that. Well, let me just ask, is there anything else you would like to share with the listeners tonight? I'm sure there's so many lessons that you've learned or any wisdom that you'd like to share. We would love to hear it.
I think the biggest things I've learned over the last 20 years is just don't second guess the callings in your life, even if they sound absurd or bizarre or, you know, there's reasons thoughts come into your mind. There's reasons ideas come to you.
Mhm.
And and really just take the time to listen to them and pray about them and talk to God about them because he's got a plan and it's all going to work out and you're going to look back and be shocked at what you accepted to do or you know agreed to do and end up being a huge blessing in your own life. So that's the biggest thing I've learned over the years is don't hesitate, just do what you're told to do and it's
Yeah,
going to bless you.
I love that. And look at how true it is for you. Because your mom listened, right? Your parents listened, and
Yep.
they ended up being blessed by you and your siblings. And then
Hmm.
here you are doing the same thing. You listen to God, and He has just amazingly blessed you, and of course, blessed Raylan to be with your family. It goes both ways, like you've said. So thank
Yeah.
you so much for sharing your story with us. This has just been an honor to hear it, and I know it's going to bless all those who get to listen to it. Thank you
Well,
so much.
thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed this.
Yes.